Have you ever wondered why God created friends and relationships with other people for us? You know, on the surface, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, if our whole existence is about putting our relationship with Christ first, why would you create, and make possible, all right, restart. Okay. Have you ever wondered why God created friends and relationships with other people? On the surface, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If our whole life is about our relationship with Christ and putting Him first, why would you make possible competing distractions in other relationships? Why create marital or dating relationships or parental relationships that might challenge one's relationship for God in importance? I mean, don't you think it would make more sense to just put somebody off on an island by themselves? It's just them and God, and for their whole existence, just that? Well, when we look deeper, we realize that God has more things embedded in the purpose of relationships. And the truth is that through our relationships, we worship and get to know God better. What we realize is that God has designed our human relationships to be a part of our relationship with Him. Not only do they fit, but they're an essential part of the mission that we have as Christ followers, which is to, make disciples. Making disciples is a largely relational building activity. You could easily call us relational architects, as much as disciple makers. As we devote much of ourselves and much of our lives, towards the building of relationships while we're here. In fact, when you think about it, building relationships is the central activity in which we participate in our time here on earth. So how do we do that? How do relationships that compete for our focus and time and affection fit into putting our relationship with God first in our everyday lives? As we look at a practical framework that's built around Bay West Church's core values for being a disciple maker, the objective in this series is to give you some practical instruction, on what you need to share with others in the making of a disciple. If someone followed Christ right now, the goal is, and they ask you, hey, help me know how to start. How do I do this? Okay, I've started to follow Christ. What do I need to do? The last couple of weeks and the next few weeks will give you a practical approach that you could sit down over a few lunches with them and help them understand how to start out and develop a relationship that is successful and healthy. The truth is, in fact, it's also a way to help you reorient your life around Christ in a more holistic and healthy way as well. Now, we're going to look at that today as we look how to reorient our relationships. I'd like to welcome you first to Bay West Church. My name is Jim Campbell. I'm the lead pastor here at Bay West Church. If you're watching this on the weekend it airs, or you're watching it later on down the road on a YouTube channel or something like that, or Roku or whatever, we just like to welcome you and say thanks for being a part of our service today. God has a special message for you, so just listen to Him as you go through this. If you are not a part of a life group here in Bay West, in Palm Bay, Florida, we'd love for you to be a part of that. Those are small group Bible studies that meet throughout the week. You can find different offerings that are both in person. We have some that are in person, online, and hybrid, in person and online. Some people are on video showing up while other people are in the room. It's just a really quirky mix. We're just making it work as it goes. So you can find out our offers of what we're doing by going to baywestchurch.com/groups. On the weekend this airs, I'm starting my second session of my facts group, which is frequently asked questions. And we meet online on Zoom at 7 o'clock on Sunday, every other Sunday night, starting on January the 31st, 2021. Tonight. So you can go there and be a part of that as well. And I might see you online tonight. Who knows? But just check that out. Go to baywestchurch.com/groups. If you're in the Palm Bay area and you may be enjoying us at home, and that's great. That's fine. We're going to keep doing this. But if you feel comfortable and want to venture out and meet in person, you can do that here. We meet every Sunday at 11:15 at 100 Emerson Drive, Northwest, Palm Bay, Florida, 32907. We have our KIDZONE with nursery, preschool, and elementary each week. And we are socially distanced, cleaning and taking precautions as we can in our services. Masks are not mandated, but they are encouraged, and we encourage social distancing in our seating and interactions with each other, and grace for all. As we move, also, if you would like to give, to Bay West Church, we make that opportunity for obedience available. You can go to baywestchurch.com/give and give securely online, or if you'd rather send a check, you can do that. Just make the check out to Bay West Church and send it to Bay West Church, 100 Emerson Drive, Northwest, Palm Bay, Florida, 32907. If you'd like to follow along with my sermon notes for the weekend this airs, you can go to baywestchurch.com/notes, and it'll pull up the notes that are current for the weekend that that this service is being played. If you're following this later and you'd like to go find it, you can go to the YouVersion Bible app or youversion.com, and you can go search Bay West Church and go to the archives there and search this sermon title and go along with the notes there if you would like to. But right now, I'm going to turn the service over to our worship leader, Josue Gomez, and the worship team, and we're going to sing out from our hearts to God. You know, the way we go about relationships is not only important, but it's also telling about how we love Jesus. You know, the approach to our relationships also determines the success and failure of those relationships. And not in terms of the world's measure of success, but in terms of God. You know, one of the core values at Bay West Church is to cultivate relationships with God's purposes in mind. You know, this causes us to consider why we are in relationships to begin with. And it brings the fit together with God's relationship with us. You know, we often say that we love people best by loving God most. You know, and we usually think about that in terms of serving people. You know, but if our relationships are a part of us being in relationship with Him, that works in every relationship we have. You know, how can I love God most with my relationship, in my relationship with my family? How can I love God most in my relationship with my friends? How can I love God most in my relationship with my coworkers, my classmates, my opponents, my rivals, my enemies? You may say, well, Jim, you're in church. You know, we're Christians. We don't have enemies. Oh, well, no, I'm au contraire, mon frère. I mean, all of those relationships we have, whether we like them or not, you know, when the Bible says that we are to love your enemies, we're to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, that means that you'll have to navigate relationships here on earth of people who don't like you and may actually be working against you. And how do you do that and honor God in the process? You know, some of the most important relationships that we have are in our church. You know, why? Because in many ways, the church is a safe gym for us to practice how to implement relationships into the world. You know, you start really with, you know, your family. That's your tightest knit group. You know, they're really close. The bond is super strong. And you know, and sometimes you have trying family relationships, and you're really working on learning to be relational there. And when you step out as a Christ follower, the next circle out is from your family, you know, really comes to your church. And that's where we learn to implement you know, healthy relationship practices by practicing it and sometimes failing. You know, when you the truth is, when you are a group of messed up people that are trying to get toward the same goal, often trying to figure out what that goal is, really what it looks like at the same time, you get a lot of practice in a lot of different relationships and different types of relationship situations. You know, in a church, there are people you like. There's people you don't like. There are people who annoy you. There are people you enjoy. There are people that you have to struggle to love, often when you really don't want to. You know, they pull you out of your comfort zones. Sometimes they hurt you. Sometimes you hurt them back. How do you respond? The one thing you know is that in your church, there's this safety net of everyone's trying to follow Christ, and they're trying to figure it out together. So how do we do that? How do we figure it out together and get better? You know, as we go into a world that really, once we get out of there, that fully doesn't understand what the purposes of relationships are. You know, if you don't understand the purpose, you won't do them well. You know, and if you don't practice healthy relational practices, you won't have healthy relationships. You know, that Christ follower you hurt, or the Christ follower that hurt you, you may not speak to them anymore. In fact, you may have left a church because somebody hurt you so bad. And you may have gone somewhere else, you know, just to get away from them. I got to give you a news flash. You're going to spend eternity with them in heaven, and you can't run from them there. Better work on your relationships here while we can. And today I'm going to look at some verses of Scripture that help us see a framework for all our relationships. See, these, as a disciple maker, as you're helping someone to learn to follow Christ, these are some things that you should teach people about relationships and goals that we should have. You know, Paul wrote a letter to the church at Thessalonica, which was a church that he and some friends started. And in chapter 2, he wrote this about his and Timothy's and Silas's relationships with the people there to help them know how they should be to those around them as well. In verse 10 of chapter 2, it starts here. It says, he wrote, "You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed." See, one of the first things we understand there is we are to be examples to others on how to live. Whether we like it or not, when you follow Christ, we are now called Christ's ambassadors or his representatives to other people. And when people look at you and me, you know, as Christ followers, and they see how we act and respond and how we go about our lives, we're showing them a picture of what Jesus is. Right or wrong, we're broadcasting that. Now the first thing you might think would be like me, like, oh no, what if I screw up? I mean, the truth is you will. You're going to screw up. You're going to mess up. We don't just model Christ in our successes. We also teach in our failures as well. When I mess up, the worst thing I can do is hide it or try to play it off or pretend it didn't happen. The best thing I can do is show people how to get back up when I fall, right? And the same with you. We confess our sin to God. We apologize to those we've wronged and try to make amends. And then we repent of what we've done. That means we leave there determined not to do it again. Now, you may do it again. You may fall. You may slip up. You may mess up one more time. But if I do, I rinse and repeat. I go right, I'm so sorry. I apologize to the Lord. I confess my sin. I apologize. I make amends where I can. And then I repent and walk away, and then it's all you can do. And that's what you do, and that's what you teach others to do as well. In verse 11, Paul wrote this. He said, "For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children." One of the things you have to know as a Christ follower is you're part of a family now, a larger family, more extended family. And what that means is the family is for us. They're on our side. And the relationship isn't just a casual one, but it's one that requires commitment and sometimes sacrifice to help each other out. The people that follow Jesus are of special importance to each Christ follower, and it should be that way. We are to do good to all, but look at what Paul wrote in Galatians chapter 6. He wrote a letter to the church at Galatia, and we know it as the book of Galatians. In chapter 6, verse 10, he wrote this: "Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all, starting with the people closest to us in the community of faith." You see, starting with, in some translations, it's translated as especially to the people closest to us in the community of faith. That means that we give our brothers and sisters, we should give them the widest berth of grace. But often, that's not the case. What we do a lot of times is the opposite of that. We expect them to be perfect because they should know better. They know Jesus. And when they mess up, we pounce with all fury. Like, sometimes, I can't believe you didn't meet the expectation. You weren't perfect Jesus to me. But that's the opposite of what Paul says to do. We should work for the benefit of those around us. As a team approach, what if you and I took the approach that if the person next to you loses, then you lose too? If we do that, we would work hard to help others succeed. What does that relationship look like, though? What part of as a father deals with his children is Paul talking about? Are we supposed to let them have a room in our home? We assign them chores, we give them curfew, add them to custodio or whatever, what do I do? That's in verse 12, but let's read verse 11 again and then roll into verse 12. Verse 11 said, "For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children." And here's how: encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God who calls you into his kingdom and glory. So now, here's some things that should be a part of every relationship that you have if you're approaching them with God's purposes in mind as a Christ follower. Your relationship should be encouraging. Now, here's a couple of ways there's a couple of ways that you can encourage people, and both of them are important. What we all think about when we hear the word encouragement really is this first way is that we think encouraging is to cheer them on. Way to go! And there should be a part of every relationship that you have that you find good things about the person to cheer them on about. You should, and sometimes you may have to work to find them, some harder than others. You may have to work to find good things, but you should encourage people in the right things that they're doing. But secondly, we often limit the nuance of encouraging to complimenting or saying good things to someone. But the word in Greek there is bigger than that. One commentary on the language there said that it carries the connotation of offering up evidence that stands up in God's court. In other words, sometimes you don't have to say, way to go. You have to say, wait a minute. What you're doing is not good for you. There's going to be a problem if you continue that way. Accountability in relationships is important. And Solomon wrote all about that in Proverbs all over the place. He wrote that he kind of built a framework for why accountability is important. He said the one whose walk is blameless is kept safe in Proverbs 28, and then went on in that same chapter to say those who trust in themselves alone, it's true, and trust in themselves are fools. Who trust in themselves alone are fools. Over and over, Solomon emphasizes the importance of wise counsel from others, saying that wounds, hard things, from a friend are more valuable than kisses, the buttering up and all that stuff from someone who's not spurring us on toward God. Because the truth is this, sometimes we can't see what we're stepping into, while others can. The famous verse that says iron sharpens iron, and talking about brothers sharpening each other, that's done through friction. It's not done through a smooth run through the lane, with running down through the field, with the sunlight and the sun roses and everything like that. That's not what it is. Sometimes it's through some conflict. It's through some rubbing against each other, through some friction, that we get better. But not only encouragement, but an element of comforting should be a part of every relationship as well. That's necessary when things don't go well. We often we in our family, we point to our kids a lot, and we go back to Romans 12:15, a lot, where Paul says, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. Basically using when one of them gets something and the other one didn't get something when they were younger, we would say that, you need to rejoice with those who rejoice, be happy for your brother or sister, mourn with those who mourn. You got it, and they didn't, mourn with those who mourn. And what that is really a cry for cultivating empathy in our relationships with each other. We all fail. We all fall at times, and if we're going to encourage others, we need to recognize when others are down and they need our comfort. It's important to help comfort others when they failed or experienced loss, and that means going where they are emotionally a bit. And there's a story in the New Testament where Jesus' friend Lazarus was very sick, and while Jesus was traveling there, hopefully to heal him, he died. Well, when Jesus got there, he actually paused to weep with Lazarus' sisters and those who were mourning there, even though he knew he was about to turn their mourning into dancing and raise Lazarus from the dead. If that had been me or if that had been you, we would have probably rushed right through that moment. Probably said something like, hey, stop that crying. Look, hey, shh. What are you crying for? I got this, chill out, because we didn't really think that the reason for their crying was valid, because we knew, hey, if we were Jesus, we're going to raise him from the dead, so it's not really valid for you to be all sad. Let's stop that mess, because we knew better. They need to stop. But see, Jesus didn't do that. He went there emotionally with them and let them process through that. And then he raised Lazarus from the dead and turned that mourning into dancing. If a man's stuck in a bog, up to hip deep in mud, you can throw him a rope or you can go in and get him. But either way, you have to have a good understanding of where he is before you can do either of those things. The same is true in our relationships. When a friend is hurting, it's good to take a moment to reflect on how they're feeling, what they're seeing, and that's not done by just giving a load of advice. Sometimes it's done through silent empathy often and listening. If a man is stuck in a bog as well, if you go too far in to get him, you'll get stuck there, and the same is true with empathizing with others. If you feel it too heavy and you just dive down head first into that trap that they're in, you're not going to be any help for anybody, because you're going to be so down there you can't help them get out. What value are you to help them get out if you jump into the same trap as well? We reach out to where they are and we gently restore them. Not on our rushed timetable, though, but on the timetable that God's Spirit moves us to restore them on. See, God's Spirit helps us to understand, how far do we need to go? What do we need to say? What are the things? When is the right time? How far emotionally? When is it time to come out? We have to be very sensitive to God's Spirit because he helps us in those times. Finally, our relationships should also be marked by urging people to live lives worthy of God. And the word is translated urging. What it means really is kind of an emphatic stating of an opinion or desire, to insist. We aren't just called to encourage or criticize or comfort people when they're hurting. We're called to emphatically insist that we all, including them, live in a way that honors God. Often we stop short here. In truth, when we empathize and encourage and comfort, the strength of that experience and that bond is what allows us to urge them to follow Christ, to live a life that's worthy of God and to move in the right direction. I heard this illustration before called the love tank, and it's really talking about marital relationships. And what it means basically is that everyone has a love tank. And what you want to do when you do nice things for your spouse or you serve your spouse, you're throwing resource in the love tank and you're filling it up. And then when you do something, when you have to say something hard or when you have to or you fail, you're drawing out of the love tank. You're pulling out of that. And what you always want to do is have more in the bank than you're pulling out, because you don't want to go in a negative, you don't want to go into a negative balance there. A lot of times that's where marriage is really getting into trouble, and they have contempt for each other because they operate at a negative balance all the time. The same is true, though, in our friendships and our relationships, is that we want to maintain a positive balance there, because a lot of times when we urge people to do something that's not what they're doing right now, urge them on to follow Christ, sometimes that draws out of the love tank, and we want to have a positive balance there. I sat in a restaurant with a man one time, years and years and years ago, probably over a decade, and he was about to leave his wife, and I urged him not to do that. Urged him not to do that. I remember another friend of ours drove his car over to the guy's house and blocked it. He pulled it up and blocked the guy's car in and said, "Look, dude, you got to talk to me, man, just to try and encourage him. Don't make a rash decision. It's going to hurt you and your family for years and years." Sad thing is the man didn't listen. He appreciated our gesture. He chose to continue down the damaging road. And the truth is that sometimes when you urge people, they won't hear you. And you still have to love them through that. When they won't leave the bog, what do? See, but our lives and their lives, it's all about living lives worthy of God. Now, we can't do that on our own. We need Christ for that. But see, God, it's done because God has called us to his kingdom, to his family and to his eternity forever. But also to his glory. And through Christ, he can make our lives worthy. It's kind of like we do what we do, God, and then Christ makes up the difference, for us. We are his ambassadors. And in every relationship that we have, we must keep that at the forefront of what we do. In our family, in our work, in our hobbies, in our neighborhoods. We have this special message of who Jesus is that we're delivering all the time, and we need to deliver that message well. And God is depending on us for that. Solomon also said in Proverbs 13 that an unreliable messenger stumbles into trouble, but a reliable messenger brings healing. And you see, God has given us this message of healing for our entire world. I truly believe that the ills of everything, the solution for it all, is not in a program, it's not in money, it's not in finance, it's not wealth, it's not education. We can do all of those things, and they're not bad things. But they're not good. Those are things that deal with the symptoms of the problem. The root is sin. And until we deal with that, which only Jesus does, we're not going to see things get better. They're just going to change the results, the bad results, often making them worse and going further than we ever thought they could go before. That's usually what happens. See, we have to bring this message of healing to Jesus, and we need to be, in every relationship we have, we should be reliable to bring it. We should be encouraging, way to go, and wait a minute. We need to be comforting people by going where they are and reaching into their hurt, not demanding that they come onto our timetable, even when it's hard. And then we need to urge them to come out of that bog, with us and live a life that honors God and shows his glory. You see, that's what it means to cultivate our relationships, to grow them to maturity. From immaturity, meaning to maturity, with God's purposes. That's why we're here, with God's purposes in mind. Now, you may be a Christ follower out there, and you've been having some relationships that are difficult. They may be difficult because you're in one of these modes. You're trying to do what is right. They may be difficult because you're not really counting that. Maybe you've fallen into a debate with a friend, and it's more about you being right than them growing long term. And at this moment, they're just not ready to hear it. And you need to back up and love them in this and keep the lines of communication open. And one day, God will bring them to a place, and maybe they'll be there. Maybe you keeping the lines of communication open allows somebody else to come in and say something that helps them. And God has many ways that he could bring people into their lives. And he's maybe have a long process of that. And you may even someday part ways, and you may not even see the result of the end until you get to heaven. But God's working. You can trust that. Maybe you're out there right now and you've been hurt in church. Maybe that's the reason you're watching today. You're like, somebody hurt me in church. I don't want to go back there. I don't want to be a part of that because they're mean. The truth is maybe someone was, but why they were mean? Is because they're struggling with sin in their heart. And it may not be a one-to-one, but it's affecting them, and they're struggling. They're trying to get out. They're trying to get out from under, just like you. And we're all, imagine us all, we're all in the water, trying to help each other get to shore. That's what's up, And I'm not saying that makes things better. I'm not saying it justifies anything. But I'm saying that God is calling us to love and forgive and move forward for our own sake, as well as for the sake of the church and the mission as a whole. The truth is that when we can't forgive, we tie ourselves to a very hurtful thing. It's like we're chained to it, and we never walk away from it. We can only get so far, and it tugs at our leg, and we turn around, and we look at it again, and we're stuck there. One more thing. Forgiveness, a lack of forgiveness is the prison that we live in. I heard people say that being unable to forgive, is really like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die because it hurts you. If you're out there today, and I'm, wasn't really a part of my message per se, except in the relationship part, and you're struggling to forgive somebody of something, I'm going to encourage you to do that, to do whatever it takes, to ask God, to beg God for to help you forgive, because God has the strength and power to do that, because you need to be able to sever from that hurtful thing. You need to be able to wrap it up. It doesn't need to be something that controls you, that moves you. In every relationship that you go in, you every time it gets close to something of what happened before, it flares up again. It's like an ember sitting close to a paper, or you throw a paper gets close and the paper just flames up, from the heat. You need to pour some water on that. Forgive it, move past it, resolve it. Does it mean that you can't seek justice? No. But it does mean that forgiveness is a better way to go, healthier and long term. That's also part of the relationships we have. If you're out there, if you don't know Christ, and you're maybe having a terrible time trying to forgive someone, that's where you need to start, is to start a relationship with Christ. Because Christ gives us the power to forgive and to heal those areas of our lives. He comes in and does that for us, with us. And the way you do that is realizing, hey, we've all sinned. We've all messed up. That's caused a rift with God. In other words, in really layman's term, we've kind of hurt God. We've kind of insulted him. We haven't damaged him, but we have insulted him and choosing to go a way that's different from his. That's called sin. Everybody has done that. But God said that for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That's everybody. He says, but if we confess with our mouth that he is Lord, we believe that God raised him from the dead. In other words, if we believe that Jesus came and he was fully God, fully man, that he died on a cross and took on all of our sin, paid the penalty for what we deserve, that we can now come and commit our lives to him. He is Lord, which means he's the boss of our lives. We're going to live that way. We say that outwardly and inwardly in our hearts. We believe in him so much that we're going to trust him over our own messed up judgment. And we're going to follow him for the rest of his life. He comes in, and when we understand that, we accept that, God comes in and changes us on the inside and begins a metamorphosis that will last the rest of our life. And changing us to be more like him and helping us heal from what we've experienced, in the past and here in this sin-filled world. If that's you, and that's a commitment you want to make today, I'd like to encourage you to click the connect button around the interface that you're at. Or you can go to baywestchurch.com/connect and fill out that card. Let us know. You know, if you're part of a church already here, great. Go tell your pastor. Let us know as well. We're going to pray for you. You know, we're not asking you to leave a church and come here. We don't want that. You know, we want you to plug in and be where you're at. You know, if you're not a part of a church, we would love for you to come be a part. We would love to join our gym, you know, and let us help you grow. You know, if you're not in Bay West, in Palm Bay, in the Palm Bay area, in the Brevard County area, you're not within driving distance, and you just saw this online, you know, dude, fill out the connect card. You know, let us know where you're at. We'll try to get you plugged in. We have people from time to time that call in. We have people that are in different states and sometimes different countries, and you know, we who message us here and there, and we try to help them get plugged in where they are. You know, I mean, and so we do the best we can, and a lot of times those are God-appointed relationships, you know, that just so happens I know somebody here, or I know somebody that knows somebody here that has a great church there, and we can hook up there. So we'd love to help you out there. Once again, you know, if you aren't part of a life group, you know, that you can be a part of that by going to baywestchurch.com/groups. If you're anywhere in the United States, you can join one of our online groups and be a part of that. No worries at all. But I'd love to thank you for being a part of Bay West today. You know, if you're in the Palm Bay area and want to come out, 11:15 on Sundays, you're welcome to be here. Mask encouraged, not required. We do social distance, and we ask for grace for everyone at the varying levels of sensitivity that people are with the virus right now. You know, if you are a parent and you would like to have some help in discipling your child, we have KIDZONE live here, but if that's not comfortable for you, you can go to baywestchurch.com and join our Bay West KIDZONE Facebook group. We have content we put up each week with a discussion guide that you can go through with your kids. Also, we're praying with our kids live in the Bay West prayer room on Wednesday nights at 5 and 7 with our children's leader, Maggie Pearson. Also, we want to let you know if you want to give your tithes and offerings, you can do that. We make that opportunity for our obedience available to you if you choose to take it. It's you can go to baywestchurch.com/give and give securely online there, or you can send a check in to Bay West Church. Just make it up to Bay West Church and send it to 100 Emerson Drive, Northwest, Palm Bay, Florida, 32907. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day today and for the rest of the week, and that you take the relationships you have and are encouraging and comforting and urging as you help people get closer to Christ. Y'all have a great week.